Yeah, look there.
Good morning and a warm welcome to the Development Control Committee meeting today, the 6th of November 2024. Before we begin on the formal agenda, trafficking. Good. Okay. Good that you made it, Andy, anyway, so thank you very much. And I was just opening up with a few words, so you haven't missed anything, really. Look, I'd just like to draw your attention to a few items. The first one is if you have a mobile phone, there are some choices. Put it on silent, airplane mode, or turn it off, please. The meeting will be live streamed, or is being live streamed now, actually, on YouTube. So if any member of the public attending this meeting objects to being filmed, please advise us immediately and we'll ensure that they are not included in the filming. Although I stress, the public gallery will not feature in the live stream and the public speakers will only be filmed from behind where they are seated and their faces will not be visible. So a quick check, anyone concerned about appearing live on YouTube? Okay, thanks, that's good. Now, members, I normally read out the cue to speak, but we're now back to analog. So if you want to speak, it's the traditional, put your hand up and wait to be called, okay? And hopefully that'll work out. Right, now we'll begin the formal agenda. So, Helen, could I have apologies for absence, please?
Chair, we have apologies from Councillor Rachel Hood, who has not appointed a substitute.
Okay, well, that covers off 1 and 2 on the agenda then. So can we turn our attention, members, to the minutes of the meeting of the 2nd of October 2024? Are there any comments or corrections? No? Okay, that's fine. So could I have a proposer, please? Councillor London, and a seconder, please. Councillor David Smith. So it's been proposed by Councillor London and seconded by Councillor David Smith to accept the minutes without amendment. Can I see a show of hands in favour of those minutes, please? Okay.
Thank you. So that motion is carried. The minutes are approved.
Thank you, Claire. So item 4 is the usual declarations of interest, which I try to read out verbatim. Members are reminded of their responsibility to declare any disclosable pecuniary interest, other registerable interest or non-registerable interest which they have in any item of business on the agenda, no later when that item is reached, and when appropriate to leave the meeting prior to discussion and voting on the item. Are there any members? Councillor Chester.
Thank you, Chair. My interest relates to agenda item 5. This item first came to the DCC in December this year, and there was a suggestion of predetermination on my part. Subsequently, I chose as ward member to reserve my right to speak, but not to take part in the debate or vote. For consistency, I will do the same today. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Chester. And Councillor Sayer, please. Oh, microphone, please. Yeah.
I refer to item 7. I am the ward councillor for this application, but I have registered to speak as ward councillor.
That's absolutely fine, Councillor Sayer. Thank you very much indeed. Right, well, we turn our attention to the first item on the agenda, which is the application Reed Hall Farm in Chedborough. I'll invite Greg to make a presentation, and I shall move to the side so people can see. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for your time this morning. As has just been said, I'll be talking through application DC 240458 full at Reed Hall Farm, Chedborough. The application seeks the construction of one dwelling following the demolition of existing buildings. The application was originally referred to committee via delegation panel in July and appeared at the September meeting of the committee. Members were minded to approve the application contrary to the recommendation, which required a risk assessment to be prepared and the application to reappear before the committee today. Now that the risk assessment has been completed, I'll be going through the presentation again this morning, and we can go through any other items.
Yes, Councillor Holden?
Could the officer speak closer to the mic?
Yeah. How's that? Is that better?
Just a bit closer, bro.
Right then. In terms of setting out the context of the application site, on the slide on the screen behind me, we can see the location plan on the left-hand side and the GIS plan shown on the right-hand side. This right-hand side plan demonstrates the application site's position in relation to the settlement of Chedborough, which is to the west, and the plan on the left demonstrates the access to the site, which is via the A143, which is to the northwest, just here. And now just switching to a closer GIS plan on the right-hand side, we can see a more detailed makeup of the application site and the surrounding buildings. Reed Hall is to the north, that's this pink building here. This is a listed building, and to the south and east of Reed Hall we have got converted buildings and agricultural and equestrian buildings as well. And just here on the left-hand side we've got the existing block plan for the site. This is where the development is proposed. So here we can see we've got 2 existing agricultural buildings which are to be demolished under this proposal. Both of these buildings have been the subject to prior approval applications under Class Q of the General Permitted Development Order. This was introduced in April 2014 and allows for agricultural buildings to be converted to dwellings without the need for planning permission. The applications for these 2 buildings were determined in March 2023, and it was found that the works proposed were within the requirements and stipulations of Class Q for the conversion, and this can therefore be done through permitted development. We're now going to take a look at the proposed block plan for the site. So here we can see the position of the proposed new dwelling following the removal of the existing buildings. This is situated slightly to the east of the existing buildings, and we can see some of the associated works included within this application, such as the parking area here, and then the works to form a driveway forward. I'm just going to go through the elevations for the agricultural buildings that are currently within the application site and benefit from the Class Q prior approval. This is the northernmost of the 2, and it's also smaller in both terms of footprint and height compared to the southernmost building. And as I've said, this will be removed under the proposal. And switching now to the other one to the south, also being removed under this proposal. And prior to looking at the elevations for the proposed dwelling, I'm just going to go through the elevations for the permitted development schemes. I think that'd be useful in seeing what was determined in 23. And this is the smaller of the 2, so we can see the elevations and the floor plan there. So this was to be a 1-bed dwelling. And then moving to the larger building to the south. Here we've got the elevations again and then the floor plans for this one as well. And we will now go through the proposed elevations for the new dwelling. We have a similar sort of overall design and form for this proposal compared to the permitted development scheme for the larger of the two buildings, albeit there is a difference in the fenestration details with larger elements on these plans. And just before we go through some of the photographs of the site as existing, I'm just going to take a look at the floor plan of the proposed dwelling. So on the left-hand side, we have the ground floor, which has got the domestic living space. And on the right-hand side, we have the first floor, which shows 5 bedrooms. As a result of this, it would be expected that the dwelling would benefit from 3 vehicle parking spaces. And this has been demonstrated on the block plan. Now, just going through some of the photographs, here we have the larger of the 2 existing agricultural buildings, so that's the one that's to the south. And then this is looking across in an easterly direction with a partial side elevation of the existing building. And then going back to the other side. And this is the smaller of the 2 existing buildings. And then just looking back on ourselves again from that side in the opposite direction. Just before going through the policy considerations for the proposal, I'm just going to give a brief summary of the representations and comments which have been made during the consultation period. On this occasion, there was no response from the Parish Council. The ward member is Councillor Chester, who is with us today and I believe is going to be speaking. There were no formal neighbour representations received during the consultation process. However, at the September committee meeting, there was a member of the public who spoke on the application and expressed their support for the development. The consultees for this development have included the Environment Team, Private Sector Housing and Environmental Health, Suffolk Highways and the Conservation Officer. None of these have objected to the proposal, subject to appropriate conditions. In terms of the assessment for the proposal, the starting point is the principle of development. In this case, the relevant local development plan policies are DM5 and DM27. These relate to development in the countryside and housing in the countryside, respectively. These policies set out the ways in which the construction of a new dwelling in the countryside may be acceptable. In this instance, the new dwelling does not accord with any of the areas set out within these policies and therefore does not benefit from the principle of development or support from the adopted local development plan. Notwithstanding this first point of the assessment, the proposal has also been considered with regards to its impact on character, amenity and the listed building to the north. The impact on these areas are considered to be acceptable and would be required in any events thereafter. The proposal being in accordance with these policies is not considered in this instance to be sufficient to outweigh the in principle departure from the development plan where we do not have the principle of development present. In a similar way, it is considered that the development would be policy compliant with regards to highways, landscaping, ecology and protected species. Acceptability in these areas would also be required in any event and are considered to be neutral in the balance for this application. As has been mentioned, the agricultural buildings which would be removed under the proposal benefit from an existing Class Q prior approval. This would allow their conversion into dwellings. This legislation allows for the creation of a new dwelling or dwellings in a location that would otherwise be unsustainable, as it carries the benefit of converting an existing dwelling. A fallback position is a material consideration in the planning balance that can carry weight in favour of a proposal. The amount of weight that is carried is determined by a number of factors and is not the same in every application. It is not considered in this case that the existing prior approval position justifies a departure from the development plan, as there are no additional benefits associated with this scheme as opposed to the fallback position, and the weight attributed to this position is therefore considered to be limited. In terms of concluding, planning law requires us to make decisions in accordance with the adopted development plan unless there are material considerations which indicate otherwise. In this case, the proposed development is a departure from planning policy, with the relevant policy considerations shown on the slide and within the report. As a result, the application does carry a recommendation of refusal. At the September committee, members were minded to approve the application contrary to the recommendation, and as a result of this, the decision-making protocol was invoked. As part of this, a risk assessment for members has been prepared. This discusses the reasons provided for being minded to approve the scheme, which were stated as being the permitted development fallback and the enhancement to the amenity of the area and the environment. It is the view of officers that in this particular case, the reasons which have been provided would not outweigh the conflict with the development plan in order to justify a departure. Regarding the permitted development fallback, should this scheme be implemented, it would see the creation of 2 dwellings. Sustainability is applicable in 2 ways for this development. This is in terms of both location and conversion of existing buildings. As set out within the development plan, this location is not considered sustainable for a new dwelling. Additionally, the provision of a single new dwelling in this location removes the sustainability aspects supported by Class Q permitted development, which are to both increase rural housing stock and convert existing buildings. With regards to the improvements to the amenity and the environment of the immediate surrounding area, it is the officer view that any enhancement to the amenity of the area would not be sufficiently different to that which would be achieved through a permitted development scheme. This is due to the visual similarities between the developments and the environmental benefits which have not been evidenced to us fully in the application, have not been demonstrated to only be achievable through demolition and would otherwise be expected to be achieved through the conversion of an existing building. The proposed scheme is not considered to offer any of the tangible public benefits which would be achieved under a permitted development scheme. There have been no amendments to the proposals between the meeting of the committee in September, and the recommendation at an officer level remains one of refusal. I would like to draw members' attention to paragraph 16 of the risk assessment, which, should members be minded to approve the development, contains the conditions that would be recommended. That concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Greg. So we turn our attention now to public speaking on this item, and we've got Councillor Mike Chester, who wants to address the committee in his capacity as a ward member. And we've got Oliver Neal, who is the applicant. So, Councillor Chester, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Members, this is a repeat virtually of my set piece from the September meeting. On with the knowledge that our planning policies are crucial in determining application outcomes, I draw your attention to page 19. The permitted fallback position. This application benefits from an extant Class Q approval for residential conversion, which is capable of being implemented. Without Class Q approval, I would not have called this application in. Class Q approval was never intended for replacement buildings, which forms the basis of this application, and as the case officer states in paragraph 48 in page 156, a dwelling being delivered without the benefit of reusing the existing building undermines the objective of Class Q. The barn at the centre of this application, agricultural in appearance, open-sided, partly of concrete construction and of little architectural merit, lends itself poorly to conversion. A replacement building in a similar style, built from the ground up to a higher standard achievable than under conversion, and whilst not policy compliant, given the lack of consultative objections and limited impacts, offers a compelling alternative to a situation where residential conversion under Class Q is extant. The risk assessment on page 18 lays out the clear dangers and potential reputational risks to the authority through an inconsistent approach, but also that each application is considered on its own merit. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Chester. Oliver, you've got 3 minutes.
Good morning. Having spoken at the previous committee meeting, I don't want to go back through the same items then, but wanted to add a few points having followed this risk assessment closely. I do understand the process and the reasoning behind it after the previous meeting resulted in an 11-2 vote in favour of approving this application. No new reasons for refusal have been flagged up during this process other than, in our eyes, attempts to transfer the balance of common sense in favour of refusal. Rather worryingly, there are some wholly inaccurate statements that have been used. As an example, point 47 suggests that the sustainability benefits that this application brings could be carried out under Class Q. This is nonsense, and it concerns us greatly as to the understanding of our application. It also suggests that there is no visual benefit which would be used to add weight in favour. It has clearly not been noted that one of the main reasons this application was submitted in the first place was to tie the new dwelling in with existing buildings of Reed Park Farm, which isn't possible via Class Q. The addition of the flint walls to the lower aspects of the building does exactly this, while also bringing ecological benefits at the same time. No mention is made of this or the fact the Heritage Statement is in full support of this application. Point 56 is another example of a lack of understanding in our eyes. The economic benefit far outweighs the Class Q design, as this build is forecast to cost 38% more, the majority of which will be to the local businesses. From a risk perspective, the location of this build is far away from any public view, with the only person who could see the building being in full support of this application, as you heard in person from Nigel Oakley in the last committee meeting. I will also say that in case the design remains somewhat misunderstood by certain parties, that the footprint size, the height of the eaves, the roof pitch and the appearance of the roof is the same as the Class Q, giving no real reason to view this as a risky alternative to what we currently have planning for. The world in which we live seems to thrive on a sort of box-ticking culture, but common sense needs to prevail at times, and a development confined to the scope of this Class Q would be a detriment to the site compared to what can be delivered under this full planning application. I reiterate that it is widely accepted that where alternative new build proposals offer either enhancement to the setting or a reduction in density when compared to the fallback, the development could and should be allowed to proceed. I sincerely hope the committee members are still able to see all the benefits this application brings over what has already been granted under Class Q and vote with the same vigour as before. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Oliver. With the arrival of Councillor Whittam, Claire would just like to address the committee and the public gallery.
Thank you, Chair. Just for clarification, because Councillor Whittam hasn't heard the presentation, he will not be able to vote on this item.
Thank you. Mike, you're going to leave the room, yes? At which point, members, it's over to the committee. Comments and questions. Councillor Waldron, please.
Thank you, Chair. To me, it's a no-brainer. I still support it, and I don't think much has changed. So therefore, I propose we pass this application.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Waldron. Just let me make a note. Can I see a seconder in the room at the moment, please? Councillor Holder. Would you like to speak, Councillor Holder?
Only to say that we talked this through some length last time in September, but obviously we have to put the conditions in that the officers recommended should we wish to go against officer recommendations, so they should be included. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holder. Okay, Councillor Chester. Oh, sorry. So I obviously missed some. Councillor London is what I should have written down.
It's quite all right, Chair. I'd just like to confirm, just because we didn't mention it in today, although it was mentioned obviously at the last meeting for the benefit of anyone listening, whether or not this application will therefore mean that Class Q is not possible in the future, and that this is a true one or the other situation, not a one and the other situation.
Thank you, Councillor London. Councillor Malmay-White, please.
Thank you, Chairman. It is a difficult one, this, because I do have concerns about setting a precedent for undermining Class Q, but occasionally I think common sense has to prevail, and actually would one property here be better than two small ones? You'll still have the same number of cars. It'll be a larger building with 3 car spaces, as we've heard, whereas the 2 dwellings would be 2 spaces and 1 space. So from the point of view of traffic, we're not generating any extra traffic, I don't think. You know, I've had a lot of Class Q developments in my ward, and I'm very concerned about undermining that and setting a precedent for people to come in at a later date and say, we don't fancy the Class Q, let's put in a new building. So I understand exactly where the officers are coming from, but each case has to be determined on its own merits, and I hope that theory will prevail should another Class Q come in like this. And I am leaning towards supporting this application because I think common sense in this case tells me that maybe 1 dwelling would be better than the 2. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Momo White. Councillor David Smith, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I wasn't at the previous meeting, so this is the first chance I've had to look at this and hear the presentation, but I just really can't see a problem with it. Councillor Momo White's spoken about precedent. Don't think that comes into it. As she's also said, it's each case on its merit. And it was mentioned in the report that it was the officer's opinion. I value the officer's opinion, but to me that is just a guideline and very subjective. So I wouldn't have any problem supporting this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor David Smith. No other members indicating at the moment. Officer responses, please.
Yes, so just going to yourself, Councillor London. Under this proposal, the 2 existing buildings with the permissions would be removed, so we would not be in a situation where we could have a new dwelling constructed and also the Class Qs implemented at the same time. It would be one or the other.
Rachel, did you want to add?
Yes, Chairman, I think we need to be clear if we, with the proposal to approve and the seconding of it, need to be clear of members' reasons for doing that. Now, obviously, in the last debate, the reasons were that they felt the environmental enhancements, the enhancements to the amenity of the area, and also the Class Q fallback position outweighed the objections in terms of policies in the local plan. So I wanted to check that that's still the case, or if there was anything else to add to that in terms of the reasons for the decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. I'll go to Councillor Waldron. Is there anything you want to add?
No, I'm fine with that. As it stands is as it stands. Thanks very much.
Okay, Councillor Holder. Yep, okay. And now we've got Councillor London.
I'd just like to add, I feel that the standard of the house that's capable of being produced as a new build in terms of environmental impact, heating, insulation, etc., we're going to end up with a far more 21st century piece of accommodation than we would with the Class Q, and I think that is also material, that the house itself is going to be of a better quality construction and therefore more environmentally friendly.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Councillor Ball, please.
In my area, we have a lot of Class Q applications and also the potential for them. And I'm concerned that one of the reasons that Councillor London has said that the environmental advantages of a new build against converting are a reason for it, which actually undermines the concept of a Class Q development. And I do worry that this creates a precedent for Class Q. I know we say we look at things on its own merit, but I think this is a bit of a slippery slope, and it does worry me, and I'm still a bit, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ball. Any other member comments? Because from what I've... Councillor Dicker.
Thank you. First of all, can I say how great it is to be here in Mildenhall, as always, on the planning committee coming over to the Old Forest Heath side. I'm looking at it slightly different. The way I'm looking at it is this is not actually on exactly the same footprint. It's on a different part of the inside the curtilage and that, and it is a brand new building. And for me, it concerns me with my area, also a very rural area. And for that reason, I totally agree with the officers on this. Now, I don't like messing around with our policies, and I think this will be doing that, and that's why we have an appeal system where an inspector will look to see how updated our policies are. So in my view, the fact that I see it as a brand new building, not on the same footprint, to me means I can't vote for this, and I will be going along with the officers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dicker. Any further comments, members? No. Did you want to? Of course you can, Rachel, yes.
Chair, I just think, given the discussion about this additional reason, the sort of sustainability credentials of the new build, I think we probably just need advice from the proposer and seconder as to whether that is an additional reason
So I was-
for approving.
I was going to ask that anyway.
Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
No, it's okay. That's absolutely fine. So, yeah, based on what Councillor London articulated to the committee, are you as the proposer and you as the seconder content to include that in your reasoning or exclude that from your reasoning? Councillor Waldron. Okay. So that puts you on the spot, Councillor Holder.
Well, in this day and age of climate emergency, etc., I think it's actually paramount that we do make it a condition that if people, you know, I mean, I do take the point that these barns are very difficult to convert and make, you know, A-grade insulation. You know, it's very difficult. And a new build, you can do it as you go. And plus the heat pumps and solar panels, all that sort of thing, can be fitted at the time rather than retrofitted badly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holder. Councillor Glossop.
If you're going to include that as one of the reasons for approving it, shouldn't we not be voting on that because we don't all agree with that, because that's going to make it difficult for us in the future with other Class Q applications coming forward?
Well, I think because we've got a proposal here, and the proposer and seconder have actually now included it, I think there will be a vote on that, won't there? It'll be part of the committee's consideration whether they support the application or not. So I think by definition it will be. Of course you can, Rachel.
Chair, I think based on the comments of Councillor Holder then and the uncertainty in terms of the environmental and sustainability credentials of what is being proposed at the moment, we'd look to add an additional condition on so that a scheme is submitted to the council to agree the sustainability credentials of the construction. So that would be an additional condition to bear in mind with the vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Councillor Malmay White, please.
Thank you, Chairman. This does slightly change the approval because every other Class Q will jump on that. And I am concerned about including that wording in the approval. I think that really does set a precedent, and that, you know, we're judging this on its own merits, but to include that then gives a handle to every other applicant under Class Q that they will be able to use as a reason for changing their applications. So I'm not happy with that.
I'll come back onto that in a moment. Councillor Neal, please.
What was on? Sorry. I'm a little confused now, to be honest. Are we talking about the proposal standing without all the solar panels and heat pumps, etc., and they are just purely a condition that's added, so that changes the proposal? Are we going to change the proposal that doesn't include that, but it's included as a condition?
Listen, I'm going to need advice here from the service manager on that particular question, in all fairness. Over to you.
Chairman, I think at the moment what we've got is a proposal that includes a reason for approval that relates to the sustainability credentials of the new build. Officers are recommending that precise nature of the sustainability proposals of the new build would need to be conditioned because it's not clear that we've got all that information from the applicant as it stands in terms of paperwork, so it would need to be conditioned. What we have, so we have a proposal with a reason and now an additional condition as a result of that additional reason, and it would be for members to vote on that proposal to approve with that additional reason and with that additional condition. Obviously, if that then failed, there would need to be another proposal put, potentially without that additional reason and additional condition, but that's the proposal on the table at the moment. Thank you.
The alternative is not to include the sustainability reason in the reason for your approving. But that relies upon you, Councillor Waldron, and Councillor Holder agreeing to remove the one that you just included. Yeah, just to maybe simplify it and satisfy the concerns.
Well, I take Councillor London's point of view that we should be pressing new builds of any sort to be sustainable and eco-friendly as best they can be. But if it's going to make life easier for the committee to make a decision on the original proposal with the officers, caveats taken into account, I'm quite happy to change my mind. I don't know, Don, it's up to him.
Yeah, I'm quite prepared to go with that as long as it doesn't cause eruptions with the rest of the committee. I'm quite happy to remove that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. So, so can we just, for my benefit, just summarise, if that was not included now, can we just summarise what we would be voting on in terms of the rationale? Thank you.
Yes, so the reasons for approving the application would be the same as the ones contained in the risk assessment report. So it was improvements to the general environment and amenity of the area, and the Class Q fallback outweighing the concerns about the proposals being contrary to the policies of the development plan. And there would be no additional condition as a result of that other reason for approval falling away.
Thank you, Rachel. Look, I think it was well-meaning by Councillor London and picked up by the proposer and seconder, but I'm now going to put the proposal to the committee. Oh, I think you got in there just in time. We wouldn't normally allow that during my summary, but over to you, Councillor Miller-Jones.
Thank you. I was just wondering if we can ask to add that condition anyway, just because it would obviously be a benefit to have sustainability conditions. So just asking Rachel if we could add the condition even without it being part of the proposal.
Yes, we could do that. Whether the committee wants to do that or not, that would have to go back to the proposer and the seconder.
Yes, okay. Yeah. I'm slightly uncomfortable about going back to the proposer and seconder again, but can I have a...
I just keep it simple, Chair. We'll go with the main proposal, and then that fails, we can come back with something else.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with that statement. Keep it simple.
Thank you very much indeed, both. Right, before we go any further, I'm going to I'm going to test the position of the committee. So it's been proposed by Councillor Waldron for approval and seconded by Councillor Holder for approval against the officer's recommendation of refusal, and it doesn't include any sustainability relationship at all. So can I see a show of hands in favour of those members in favour of approving against the officer's recommendation, please? And could I see a show of hands in favour of those who are against approving the application, please? And any abstentions, please? You ready, Claire?
So that is 6 votes in favour, 5 votes against and 2 abstentions. So the motion is carried and the application is approved.
Thank you very much indeed, Claire. Right. We move on to the next application on the agenda, but we need Councillor Chester, of course. So thank you very much indeed. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. This is agenda item 6. It's the land adjacent to the Duke of Marlborough in Hepworth. And Connor is the presenting case officer. So you begin when you're ready, and I will move to the side again.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. So the application before you seeks planning permission for a single-storey detached dwelling situated within designated countryside on land previously forming part of the Duke of Marlborough Public House, which itself has now been converted into 4 dwellings. The application was originally referred to Development Control Committee via delegation panel, and on the 7th of August, officers recommended that the planning application be refused due to it being considered contrary to the adopted development plan, in particular policy DM27. The committee resolved that it was minded to approve the planning application. As such, the decision-making protocol was invoked, requiring a risk assessment report. Since the last committee meeting, plans of the proposed bus shelter have been received and reconsulted on. The risk assessment provides clarity on the queries raised at that committee meeting, and has included some appropriate conditions on pages 50 to 54 in the event the application is approved. So the presentation will revisit those plans, including those submitted since the last committee meeting, and also clarifies the reasons for retaining the recommendation for refusal. So the map before you shows the site just off-centre, indicated by the drop-down arrow. I will highlight that with the laser pointer. You can see the former Duke of Marlborough pub just to the west of the site there. You've also got 3 dwellings to the southeast and a further 3 to the southwest. Moving on to the location plan submitted with the application, you can see that the site itself indicated in red there, with the blue indicating wider ownership. The site would utilise that existing access from Berry Road, which is also the A143. This was included in the previous presentation, but to provide some context, the site has previously been the subject of a dismissed appeal. So this was for an outline application for 6 dwellings, a larger site than what's been considered, but obviously this overlays the site we're considering today. The application was ultimately dismissed by the planning inspectorate. I've added their summary of their reasons to dismiss the appeal on the right-hand side there. So the site not within a closely knit cluster as per the requirements of DM27, not an infill plot. It's evidently not a singular nor a pair of semi-detached dwellings. And the modest landscaping benefits proposed were not enough to outweigh the conflict with the development plan. Whilst not on the exact same site, a full planning application for a pair of semi-detached dwellings was also refused and subsequently dismissed that appeal on land to the west of the sites, although part of the access, overlaps with what's being proposed. The appeal decision has been included as working paper 3, but again, a summary of the planning inspector's comments can be found on the right-hand side there. So consistent with the previous dismissed appeal, the site isn't considered to be within a closely knit cluster nor an infill plot as per the requirements of DM27. Access to local services at some times and days of the year were unrealistic given non-existent in places and lack of street lighting. The inspector noted the local bus service, but explained that there would be a reliance on the private motor vehicle. And again, the modest benefits attributed with this scheme were not enough to outweigh the conflict with the development plan, and the appeal was dismissed. So moving on to the amended block plan for the proposal, you can see an annotation has been included regarding the bus shelter being behind the visibility splay. However, no further changes have been made to the block plan. So you can see a single detached dwelling remains centrally within the site with landscaping indicatively outlined on the boundaries. Moving on to elevation, so the dwelling would be single story, approximately 5.5 metres in height, and would incorporate brick walls and clay pan tiles for the roof. Onto the floor plan. So the dwelling would effectively have 3 bedrooms, with the snug and study being similar to bedroom 2 in size. You can see entrance hall, sitting room, kitchen, utility and bathroom as well. These are the bus shelter plans submitted since the last planning meeting. So you can see that the shelter includes an inbuilt bench with a canopy and would be constructed using timber with a slate roof. Onto site photographs now. So the first taking from that existing entrance to the site, looking along Berry Road to the west. Into the site itself now, what would be the southern boundary of the dwelling's curtilage. Looking northwest. And lastly, looking southwest back towards the former Duke of Marlborough Public House. I'll just replay the site visit videos from the previous meeting. I'm not sure how well you'll be able to see those, but I'll play them anyway. So this panning around from Berry Road, looking southeast currently. And then back towards the west. And the second from within the site, panning around towards the northwest. On to consultee comments. So no objections have been raised by any of our consultees. The parish council have commented on the bus shelter plans that we've received, ultimately stating they're in support of the application. The Highway Authority as well have also confirmed that they're happy with the plans for the bus shelter and are happy for those to be included as part of the list of conditions and approved plans, if the application is approved, of course. No further comments from any local residents, and of course Councillor Bull is with us today. On to officer comments. So again, starting with an in-principle policy, DM27, which concerns proposals for new dwellings within designated countryside. So criterion A and B there, the first being the development must be within a closely knit cluster of 10 or more dwellings existing and adjacent to or fronting an existing highway. And secondly, the scale of development consists of infilling a small undeveloped plot by one dwelling or a pair of semi-detached dwellings commensurate with the scale and character of existing dwellings within an otherwise continuous built-up frontage. So moving on to that first bullet point, officers consider the plot to be expansive and does not represent an infill, given there are no dwellings east of the site. The site is also not within a closely knit cluster of 10 or more dwellings. Outline planning permission was refused and dismissed in 2017, and then most recently in 2021. The first being for 6 dwellings, the second being for 2, a pair of semi-detached. The planning inspector did note that there are a few dwellings in the vicinity, including those at the public house, but these are reasonably spread out and therefore do not form that cluster. Policy DM5 does not list the redevelopment of previously developed land as one of the circumstances where housing in the countryside can be justified. The site is also not considered to be within a sustainable location, given the reliance of the motor vehicle to gain access to the site. Again, the planning inspectors have noted the nearby settlements of Wattisfield, Hepworth and Stanton that are beyond a comfortable walk due to the distance and the busy nature of the A143 and the traffic. It was therefore concluded that the proposals could not gain support from policy DM27, and this is reapplied to this application. Of course, the application further proposes the installation of the bus shelter, which, to clarify, would upgrade an existing bus stop point. It was argued at the previous meeting that the environmental and social benefits attributed to the scheme outweigh that policy conflict identifies. Ultimately, officers do not agree. Given the previous dismissed appeals and how similar this proposal is in relation to the principal policies. We've of course received the supplementary statement and bus shelter details from the agent. Highways and Hepworth Parish Council have no concerns with these plans. Again, going back to the minded to position reached previously to approve and the reasons for that, which I'll come on to on the next slide. But just to re-emphasise that the modest benefits attributed to the previous scheme, so ecological, economic, environmental, were not considered to outweigh the policy conflict. So the reason for refusal remains as per the officer's recommendation within the risk assessment. So just to reiterate the minded to approve position previously reached by members, I've highlighted the 2 key reasons there, so visual and environmental enhancements to the site, so the visual being the landscaping, the remediation of the site, and then the second being that the site is in a sustainable location due to the adjacent bus stop and associated bus service. Where a conflict with the development plan has been identified, members must clearly identify the material planning considerations and particular circumstances of a development which are considered to allow a departure from the development plan. So if members are minded to approve the application, I have included a list of conditions on pages 50 to 54, but the application is recommended for refusal. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Connor. We've got one registered speaker today, that's Phil Cowald, and you are the agent. So you've got your 3 minutes, Phil.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll just recap the rationale for the application, and that is because the condition of the land is preventing the owner of the cottages in the former public house from selling or renting the cottages. They have been unsuccessfully marketed by a number of agents and auction sites, and the feedback from the selling agents is that the expansive car park and the uncertainty about its future use is putting off prospective purchasers, and this has been confirmed by the letters from the agents which we've submitted with the application. I accept completely that this is a proposal which is contrary to the policies of the development plan, but it's an established principle of planning law that conflict with the development plan on its own is not sufficient justification to withhold consent. There must be some harm arising from that policy conflict to justify refusal. And in this case, I say that there isn't any material harm. We've heard about the previous appeal decisions, but this will have lesser impact. It's only a scheme for one dwelling. It's not 2 or 3, so the impact will be less. As you've seen, we've got one of Paul Scarlett's sensitive and traditional designs. So it's a design of a cottage which, you know, incorporates traditional architecture and traditional materials. So it's going to actually enhance what's there at the moment. Because the application is only for one dwelling, there's going to be greater scope for biodiversity improvements and wildlife habitat creation, because the scheme won't be taking up as much as the site as 3 dwellings would have been. There is a bus stop immediately adjacent to the site, so future residents will have the opportunity to use public transport. And on that point, I'd say that, you know, the occupants of that new dwelling will be no more reliant on the car than the residents of the existing converted pub. And just one last point I'd like to make is, as you've heard, there's been no local objections from any local residents, and the scheme has the full support of the parish council. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Phil. Councillor Ball.
I spoke on behalf of the parish council when this came to the last meeting, and their stance hasn't changed. They fully support it and would like to see this improvement to the site. From the point of view of the appeals for the previous applications for more houses, one of the things it says that this was not a singular or a pair of detached houses. We now have a single house there, which actually takes that reason that it was not allowed at appeal away, and I think that alters the balance of the decision. I would say that actually the enhancement this will bring to that area is more than modest benefit. I mean, looking at the photographs of the site, you cannot say that is countryside. I mean, it is a mess and it needs something doing with it. And I have no problem supporting it, and I would like to propose approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ball. I'll come back to reasons in a moment. Is that seconded? Councillor London, would you like to speak at this moment, Councillor London?
I would, if that's okay,
Yeah,
which
that's
is,
absolutely fine.
I think in a perfect world, we would be able to reference our rural brownfield policy. We don't have a rural brownfield policy because we have so few rural brownfield sites, but this is one of those. And, you know, I find it rather amusing that we are deciding that in this room rather than the room we would normally be in, because our local plan is being looked at in the other one. So I think that sort of does poke a hole somewhat. One thing I would like to ensure, and we do have a large number of conditions here. Obviously, the main reason why we are okay for this house to be here is because the current condition of the land is so poor. And I notice a lot of these are talking about no development above ground level, and prior to occupation, details of biodiversity enhancement measures will be given to us. But what we don't have is a concrete condition saying that the car park hardcore will be removed from site and that will be resolved before it's occupied. And I'm hoping that we would be able to include a condition that would encompass basically returning the site to a proper garden condition before it is marketed.
Okay. Council, I've just got to go back to Councillor Ball, because you seconded the motion. Councillor Ball, any thoughts on the returning the site to a garden condition by removing all the hardcore? Is that a condition that you would want to see included within?
I like the idea of it. I'm concerned because there's obviously the driveway there. You would have to, it might be quite a complicated condition. I'm not sure how you would do that. If
Okay.
it was possible to do it, yes, but I'd like
No,
advice
no,
on
that's
that.
fine, because what I was going to say, is because there's a slight disagreement on that point, we'll leave it to officers, but I want to carry on with the debate. I've got Councillor Miller-Jones now, Councillor Glossop, I think, put your hand up, and then Councillor Neal. Thank you, in that order.
Thank you. Yeah. Just a question on the locational sustainability side. I feel that how sort of accessible that location is by public transport, it does depend on the buses. And I can see here the information says that there's a bus every hour on 6 days of the week. I just wanted clarification on what times, when's the earliest and last bus, and also does that mean on presumably Sundays are there no buses at all? So I'd just like some clarification on exactly what is going on with those buses, please.
Thank you, Councillor Miller-Jones. Councillor Glossop, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I would like to talk about the bus shelter. I have no problem with one property going on there. It says if the bus shelter was built, the maintenance wouldn't be part of Suffolk County Council's maintenance, but I'm just worried about the future because, as we know, these things don't always last forever. I was going to ask, because we have this problem now with buses in the rural areas and cuts to buses in the rural area, we could be building, or this person could be building a bus shelter and not many buses going along there. And also we're saying that it's not in a cluster of 10, so there can't be many houses there. So I find this bus shelter thing a little odd with the application for a house. So that's what I find a bit odd.
Thank you, Councillor Glossop. Councillor Neal, please.
Thank you, Chair. My support goes with the local member, Councillor Ball. They know the area. They're very familiar with what's going on. What I get confused with is, well, it's not confused, but it's where you draw the line and what's an infill and what isn't. If you look to the left and you see houses, and you look to the right and you've got houses within your visibility, something in the middle, that's not classed as an infill. And how close does it have to be before it is an infill? Because to me, it seems like you're putting something in between two residents, even though they're a distant, but they're in eyesight of each other. So to me, to my mind, that is an infill. But that's beside the way. I support the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Neal. Councillor Thorndike, please.
Thank you, Chair. Going back to the appeal, I noticed that the inspector said there is a bus stop near to the appeal site, but I've seen nothing to suggest this service is comprehensive. Well, it's about as comprehensive as you get in the rural area at the moment, but I was at a meeting last week where the bus operator in his paperwork described the operation of those stops as dangerous. I think partly because where we're looking at now, I don't think it's a stop. I use that road frequently, and I always stop behind a bus just before the Hepworth turnoff, which is quite a way down the road from where we're looking at. So it appears we're moving the stop further towards the bend, which makes it even more dangerous in my book. The stop the other side is adjacent to the Hepworth turning, which is quite a way down from where we're talking. And I think that when there used to be a stop sign there, it used to be near the junction itself. So we're moving the stop quite a long way back towards the bend in the road, which is the hazard. I have a bit of a problem with that. Bus service along there, yes, is good, but it feeds to the village. The passengers in the main come from Hepworth Road. They don't want to move the bus stop further up the 143 to make it even more dangerous than it is currently. So I'm not too happy with why the bus shelter itself is getting involved in this application. I don't think it should be there. I don't think it's relevant. And it just puzzles me. We're flagging up a bus stop now. We're putting up a big new shelter and all the rest of it to try and sell it. But it's in the wrong place for where the buses use.
Thank you, Councillor Thorndike. Councillor Ball again, please.
I have to say the parish council didn't take into consideration the building of the bus shelter. It wasn't a selling point to them, which I think may have been the applicant thought it would be. Given the situation and some of the things Councillor has said, I don't personally think the building of that bus shelter is at all necessary. And particularly with the situation. And I would support this without the bus shelter. I just think it's complicating the issue, frankly.
Thank you, Councillor Ball. Councillor Marmay White, please.
Yes, I agree with Councillor Thorndike. I think this bus shelter is a complete red herring. Most of us in the villages have got bus shelters where buses no longer pass. You know, we cannot rely on a bus operator any longer, where the buses are open to the vagaries of councils and governments. So to me, that's a complete red herring. I come back to the previous appeal where the inspector says, however, this does not outweigh my findings that the proposed development would be an unsuitable site for housing. And that's where I am coming back to. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Marmay White. Councillor London, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I do agree that the bus stop is a bit of a red herring here. Unfortunately, as we have often heard before, the application in front of us is the application in front of us, and it includes a bus stop. So I don't think we can approve part of this without approving the other half. I'm seeing nods from officers. However, I do think that if we were to approve this with the viewpoint that we have given across, it might be quite likely that the applicant would then put in an amendment to delete the bus stop, which officers would then say yes to. The other part of what I was about to say is I think that, seeing as we were talking about precedent, it is really, we're going to need to think really carefully about what we mean about sustainable transport and what that means for rural communities, because with the proposed cuts to bus services in West Suffolk, we may end up with entire wards where it is impossible to build an extra house because there is no bus service. And we are going to have entire villages without bus service within a year. So we're going to have a very long conversation about what we actually mean about sustainable transport.
Did you want to come back, Councillor Thorndike? Or?
Only to say that in that area, the bus service is getting worked on and is getting some joy with the necessary authorities. But whether we can make a radical difference or not is not. But
no.
We are working on site to protect the bus services, aren't we, councillors?
We definitely are. But I didn't want to influence the committee by moving into one of my soapbox statements. Councillor Marmay White. Oh, sorry, Councillor Milliger. Sorry.
Nearly the same. Yeah, just I personally, I support the bus stop. I think the bus shelter, I think even if, you know, it's true that maybe it might end up being in slightly the wrong place, at least it's still somewhere for people to sit. There are a lot of people with mobility problems, a lot of people who can't stand for very long, and a lot of people who will be put off going to get a bus if it means they have to go and stand at a bus stop because of their mobility problems. So I personally, I'm glad that the bus shelter is part of the application, and I just wanted to add that. And also, I think maybe we haven't gone back to officers yet, but just in case they'd forgotten my question.
That's fine. I was just about to do it. And Councillor Ball, please.
Just very quickly, could we then have a condition whereby there are further discussions as to where the bus shelter would be put, given in concerns like that? I don't know.
That's not part of the application.
What?
Okay. Yeah, okay. Well, we'll go to Connor, trying to answer many of the questions and clear as clearly as you possibly can, and then Rachel. Over to you, Connor.
I think there was only actually 2 questions. I think a lot were more points, but I think the first question I have is from Councillor Miller-Jones regarding the bus timings. I don't have them to hand, but from memory, I think they started early in the morning, sort of 7, 8 o'clock, and then ran to sort of 6, 7. I mean, Councillor Ball may be able to advise a bit further, but that sounds, from memory, that's what I think they were. And then the second question, I think, was from Councillor Glossop regarding the maintenance of the shelter. Ultimately, the shelter is proposed on the applicant's land, so it's not Suffolk County Council land. So within their supporting statement and everything we've had, they've said that they would maintain and repair and ultimately just look after the shelter. And Highways have said they're content with that arrangement. Of course, as they're the landowner, they'd have to discuss it with the providers, but that's the understanding we have, and we've got no reason to suggest that that's not acceptable. Apologies if there were any other questions. I didn't have any down, but I had points raised.
Yeah, Rachel's going to follow up. Connor.
Thank you, Chair. So there's, I think it was Councillor Neil just asked about how you define infill if you've got something either side of a gap. It really boils down to the wording in DM27, which talks about a closely knit cluster and then an infill gap that could accommodate 1 or 2 dwellings. So in terms of looking at this site, which is quite a big site with spaced out dwellings, but dwellings in large spaces, that wouldn't comply with DM27, and that's certainly the view that's been echoed by the 2 appeal inspectors and decisions that Connor's referred to. Councillor Ball, you asked about whether we could have a condition for an alternative location of the bus shelter. That wouldn't be possible for the reason Councillor London's already explained. We're dealing with what's before us in terms of an application. I don't know if I'm jumping ahead, Chair, but I just wanted to remind members, and we'll obviously need reasons. The reasons that we noted in the risk assessment report were in relation to visual and environmental improvements, landscape enhancements, and the sustainable location of the site, particularly with the bus stop. So there's been quite a lot of discussion just now about the bus shelter and its importance or usefulness. So I think perhaps in members thinking about their reasons for proposing approval, I would urge caution or more discussion in relation to whether this is actually a sustainable location. It's less about whether there's a bus stop or a bus shelter, and we've got some really good comments already from the planning inspectorate in terms of their concerns about whether this is an actual sustainable location. So it's less about is there a bus or is there a bus stop. It's more about is this actually a sustainable location. But the other reasons that members discussed last time, and indeed you have talked more about today, is the fact that it would the landscape and visual improvements to the area. So I'll leave you with that, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Okay, I've got 3 members that indicate they want to speak, but can I just come back to the proposer and then subsequently to the seconder? Is there anything you want to add to the lists of reasons for disagreeing with the officer's recommendation? Councillor Ball.
No, I don't think so. Thank you. I mean, the term of whether it's sustainable is sustainable in rural terms. This is what we have to think about, which is quite different.
Thank you, Councillor Ball. Again, just on that point.
On that point, no difference, although I am still hoping to receive a wording for the possible extra condition.
Yes, I've actually got that. I'll come back onto that. Councillor Neil, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll talk about the bus thing again. I'm ever so sorry to mention it one more time. But if it's on private land, does it have to be recognised by bus companies as a official stop? Because it's sitting on on private land, and if that isn't currently a stop for them, they could drive right past anyway. So we could be talking about a bus stop influencing this application when it's got no relevance at all if the bus companies just drive straight past it.
Okay, point made. Councillor London, please.
You made one of my 2 points for me just then. The other one I was going to ask is remembering previously a co-op in Stanton where we made a split decision. So I believe we had one planning application for 2 different pieces of lighting around the co-op. And then we separately decided to accept part of the application and refuse part of the application. And I'm wondering whether that has application in this particular case.
Thank you, Councillor London. Councillor Dicker, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For me, this is quite easy to determine this. Firstly, as I state on a lot of times when I speak regarding villages and that, this is outside the development boundary. For me, often that's enough, but that's backed up by there's been 2 appeals already, both been turned down, and as actually Councillor Marmite White said, the conclusion here by the inspector, which is again another material consideration, what he has to say, this is unsuitable for a site for housing. For me, end of. And I'm quite happy if the applicant wants to have a go for a third time appeal on that. But this is enough for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dicker. Councillor Thorndyke, please.
Thank you, Chair. I wonder why we're going to start looking at tidying sites up by building a house. Are we going to do that across the whole area? It seems a very dangerous sort of thing to do, to specifically, we need to tidy the site, we'll build a house. Just to confirm, as you might expect, I've got the bus timetables. On the one that finished in September, because we changed everything, the bus stop in Hepworth at that point is labelled the A143 Hepworth Road Junction. So the stop is not where the bus shelter is going to be. I'll tell you what it is on the latest application, but the bus apparently there goes straight from Wattersfield to Stanton, so it doesn't actually stop at the point.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Thorndyke. Councillor Bull, please.
Just to say that the pub that was there, this committee, I wasn't on it at the time, gave permission for it to be converted to 3 houses. So it was obviously considered that it was a suitable site for housing at that time, and that wasn't that long ago.
That was just about existing.
Okay. Right, back to officers. I think there are some spicy things here that need addressing.
I don't know if I'm going to give any spicy answers, but anyway. First, Councillor London and the condition for the removal of the concrete. We do have a hard landscaping condition, which is condition 11. If the application is to be approved, we could essentially embed the wording within that condition, the wording to have the removal of the concrete, prior to occupation or whatever the trigger will be. So if members are happy for that, depending on how the vote goes, then we can include that as well. And then Councillor Neal talking about the bus service. Ultimately, we have to consider what's before us. It's been detailed that firstly the bus shelter is an existing, the bus stop is an existing stop. This would be a sheltered, so upgrading the existing service. So yeah, a bus shelter upgrade to an existing stop. And then discussions, with the landowner and the bus service providers would have to be had at their discretion. But we've had nothing from Highways or any other, Suffolk County Council to say that this couldn't be achievable. But like I said, we have to consider what's before us, and we've got no reason to believe that the bus shelter wouldn't be used. But that's not to say discussions may change in the future.
And Chair, Councillor London, what a memory, a split decision at Stanton. That was an advert consent application, which we can do split decisions on. Unfortunately, we can't do the same for planning applications.
Thank you very much indeed, Rachel. I have to come back to Councillor Bull. The removal of concrete spoil from the site. Are you content with the additional wording that Connor outlined? Okay. Right, so there are no current members wishing to speak, so let's test out where we are. It is proposed for approval by Councillor Bull and seconded by Councillor London, which is contrary to the officer's recommendation of refusal. And the only additional wording we seem to have is on the concrete spoil from the site. Okay, we agreed, that's fine. On that basis, could I see a show of hands in favour of approving this application, please? And against, please?
So that is 8 votes in favour and 7 votes against. Motion is carried and the application approved.
Thank you very much indeed, Claire. Thank you, everybody. Yep, I've had my first request for a comfort break, so we'll have 5 minutes. Thank you very much. Take care, Jim. Okay, members, please. Just checking. Yeah, okay. Okay, we just, yes, it's like a school bus count, isn't it, for everyone back on board. Right, we move on to agenda item 7, 8A Northgate Avenue, Bury St Edmunds. Tamara is the presenting case officer tomorrow, so when you're ready, please.
Thank you, Chair. So good morning, everyone. This is an application at number 8A Northgate Avenue in Bury St Edmunds. Some of you will have seen this site at the site visit on Monday. The application is seeking full planning permission for one new dwelling to be built within the rear garden of the host dwelling and accessed via a track off Avenue Approach. The application is recommended for approval and is at committee today following a referral from delegation panel on the 10th of September. So on the screen now we have the submitted location plan for the application. We have recently received a slight amendment to include the full extent of the application ownership. As you can see in blue is the host dwelling, number 8A, just here, with the red border showing the location of the new dwelling. And as you can see from the plan, and as mentioned, access will be gained via an unadopted and unowned track known locally.
I beg your pardon, I didn't realise I hadn't moved, so... I'm now out of the way.
No, it wasn't that. Sorry. Oh, sorry to interrupt. I've just got some bad news. I need to leave, at least the chamber for the moment.
Okay, thank you. Would it help if tomorrow started the presentation again, because I didn't move away from the screen? I'm quite a barrier. Oh, okay, that's fine. I will. Thank
Okay, so yep, so on the screen we've got the location plan. You can see where the new dwelling is to be sited here, and then you can see in red the access here, which leads to Avenue Approach. This track itself is known locally as Pig Lane, but as I've mentioned, is unadopted and unowned. And then the host dwelling itself sits just here in blue. To provide some wider context, I've included a satellite image and a snippet from our GIS system, which is on the screen now. For context, the site is located within the Bury St Edmunds settlement boundary, and there are existing dwellings nearby which use Pig Lane, this track, for access, which you can see, which just goes centrally down there. Such as these 3 dwellings here within a residential cul-de-sac, and then the 2 dwellings here with the red tiles, if you compare the satellite image, which were improved in 2019. As you can see, the site is located approximately halfway down the track at around 130 metres. The track does extend further to the rear of number 4 Northgate Avenue, where there is a dead end. So on the screen now is the existing block plan. So it includes the outline of a previously used pool and outbuildings, which are in the bottom of the garden of number 8A. Members who came on the site visit will also note there is a 2-storey annex building, which is located within the corner of the plot as well. This building itself is to remain in situ and will be incorporated within the design of the new dwelling, which you'll see on the subsequent slides. The building itself, this annex building, was constructed in the 1980s and has been used as ancillary accommodation in relation to number 8A. So now we move on to the proposed site plan and floor plan for the proposed dwelling. So as you can see, the dwelling is to have 3 bedrooms and be single-storey in design. A glazed link is also proposed, which you can just see here, which will link the existing annex to the new dwelling. The annex building is to be converted to a study utility and storage at 2nd floor. It's worth noting at this stage that we do have a levels difference within the plot, whereby the rear of the plot sits higher than the front. And I've got some slides to help explain that further. Furthermore, the rear garden of the proposed dwelling is accessed via steps, and the dwelling sitting below. The proposal design has been amended to ensure there is sufficient parking and manoeuvring space to the front of the dwelling that you can see here, which is in accordance with Suffolk parking guidance. So here we have the elevation drawings of the front elevation of the proposed dwelling, and that's showing with and without an existing boundary wall. So on the right-hand side, there's that annex building, the boundary wall, and then the dwelling sitting behind in relation to the site plan. Some more elevations to show the rear and the southern side, if you get your orientation right. And then finally the northwest elevation, again omitting the annex just to show the massing and the scale of the dwelling as a single-storey bungalow. So as I've mentioned, I'm just coming back to the level differences within the site. So on the screen now we do have some section drawings that might help to illustrate that further. So here on the bottom plan we can see that the front of the site, so that parking area, will sit at a lower position than the rear garden, which obviously sits at the back. As the dwelling will sit within the rear garden of number 8A, the difference in level will mean that overlooking concerns and relationship between the two dwellings is alleviated. As we move on, we have some 3D isometric drawings as well to help illustrate the massing of the new dwelling. So just to note, these are indicative only and therefore not at an accurate scale in comparison to the elevation drawings that we've just seen. The view should help to show how the annex building as well is going to be linked into the proposal, and then the amenity space and parking that surrounds the plot. So I've just got a few photos that I'll just quickly run through for the benefit of those that weren't able to join us on the site visit. So on the screen now is the junction between Pig Lane, so the track, and then Avenue Approach here. So then this picture is looking down the track towards the plot, and then you can just see the roof of that existing annex building to show where the proposed access will be for the new dwelling on the right there. And then just looking slightly beyond the plot and then further down the track, as I've mentioned, it's a one-way track with a dead end further down the bottom there. And then on the right is where the proposed access would be located. And then we've turned round, so we're looking back up the track towards Avenue Approach from Pig Lane. And you can just about see, for those who can, the roofs of two dwellings which were previously approved that I've mentioned that just sit further up the track towards Avenue Approach, just there. And then lastly, just some photos from within the plot. So as we can see, hopefully you might be able to see the sort of levels difference a bit here. So this is the rear fence that separates the plot from number 8A at present, and then the annex building roof there, and obviously just the patch of land. So I'll give you a little moment just to sort of take this slide in, but this is a slide that I've created following a couple of queries in relation to previous new dwelling applications in the area and ones that have been associated with Pig Lane and this access track. So just as a quick summary, the most recent approval has been number 6 here in green, which was in September of this year. This dwelling has been approved with a primary access off Northgate Avenue, however does have a secondary access which was existing off the track to the rear. Prior to this application, two dwellings have been approved and built out to the rear of number 16 and 17 Northgate Avenue, so highlighted in blue, back in 2019 with a sole access via the track. Lastly, it was queried during the site visit the planning history of number 4 Northgate Avenue, which is further down the track and further down Northgate Avenue. For this site, 2 applications for new dwellings have been submitted, one which was withdrawn in 2018 and another outline application which was refused. For this application, there were 3 reasons for refusal, with one of the reasons based on highways concerns and use of the track. However, as seems to be the theme of today, members are reminded that we are assessing the application before us within the red box and the merits of this application. So on the screen now, we've got the summary of consultee responses and comments that we've received throughout the application. So Bury St Edmunds Town Council have objected to the proposal, making reference to the access, waste collection concerns and turning space. Councillor Hind, as ward member, has also submitted comments of concern, again with concerns for the access. Councillor Sayer is obviously here, and I believe she will be speaking. Suffolk County Council's Highway Authority have been consulted and confirmed they hold no objections to the proposal, subject to conditions, including a construction management strategy, drainage details, and deliveries plan. No objections have also been raised by the environment team in relation to land contamination, environmental health and our ecological consultants. Over the course of the application, 6 representations have been received, including 3 objections which were submitted from the Brambles, Grovery and number 15. Within these representations, the majority of the concerns all surround the use of the track for access for both residents and construction vehicles, and the current condition of Pig Lane as a private unadopted road. So on this slide, I just wanted to sort of clarify some of our comments as officers in regards to the concerns raised around the access. So we just want to highlight at this stage that the track itself is unadopted and has no known landowner. Furthermore, future maintenance and ownership concerns are considered to be a civil matter, so therefore not a material consideration in this case. Suffolk County Council, as Highway Authority, have been consulted on the applications, and we have been involved in discussions and updates for Suffolk County with photos in regards to Pig Lane. And again, no adverse concerns for the highway network have been stated by the Suffolk County Council team. Again, the design has been proposed, as I've mentioned, to allow for adequate turning space within the plot, to allow for parking and manoeuvring for vehicles coming in and out of the new dwelling, and therefore reducing intensification and pressure on the track. So again, just to sort of summarise and comment, the site is located within the Bury St Edmunds settlement boundary, therefore the principle of a new dwelling in this location is considered to be acceptable. There are no adverse concerns in relation to the appearance, character or impact to neighbouring amenity for the dwelling within the plot. And as I've previously mentioned, the main concern is in regards to this access. For the reasons that are obviously on the slide today, we do feel that these concerns have been mitigated and have been addressed, including amending the design to obviously alleviate a lot of that pressure. In regards to the comments from Bury St Edmunds Town Council in regards to waste collection, the waste team at West Suffolk have confirmed that collection along the track is a historic arrangement, so therefore users of the new dwelling will obviously have to accord with that arrangement and drag bins to the relevant location. And as I've mentioned, we have amended the proposal and worked with it to alleviate stress on the track. So in conclusion, as I've mentioned, the dwelling is located within the Bury St Edmunds settlement boundary and the principle is considered to be acceptable. It's a single-storey dwelling. It is for one dwelling within the plot and will be accessed via a private track. No objections have been raised from any consultees to suggest that there's going to be an adverse harm from this proposal, and consequently the application is considered to accord with policy and is recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Tamara. We've got some registered speakers, objectors. We've got Julie Bayliss and Anne Last, the neighbouring objectors, but they've submitted a statement which Helen will read out. And as we heard earlier on, Councillor Marilyn Sayer has registered to speak as one of the Tollgate members. So within the 3 minutes, Helen, over to you.
We would ask that you please consider the detrimental impact and safety on the neighbouring community and the unsuitability of this and any further developments using the unnamed track for their main access. With regard to safety, more vehicles using the track will increase the risk of accidents. There are very few places where pedestrians or cyclists are able to give way to vehicles near the proposed development. Joining Avenue approach from the track is hazardous with poor visibility, and further increase in traffic here will raise the risk of accidents. Vehicles park in Avenue approach close to the track, causing problems exiting and entering. Vehicles using our private drive to turn and park is a very big problem. Vehicles regularly access our drive to then reverse to the rear of properties in Northgate Avenue, also when delivering to 17A and 17B. We feel that although technically the turning facility on the site of 8A Northgate Avenue has been revised, this is unlikely to be used, particularly for large vehicles, but we appreciate that the planning department has no control over drivers' actions. However, this does badly affect our amenity. The track is in a very poor state of repair. Over the years, this has worsened greatly with each new development and an increase in the use of the rear accesses of Avenue Approach, Fornham Road and Northgate Avenue, e.g. business use. The applicant's design and access statement comments on the tarmac apron at Avenue Approach improving visibility, which unfortunately is not the case. The boundary walls of the properties either side of the track were not altered, so therefore the width of the access remains the same. There was some improvement having a tarmac surface for 10 metres, although this was short-lived when the track eroded where it joins the tarmac, causing deep holes and damaging cars. Residents have placed shingle in the holes, but this just spills out when driving over it. In 2021, the Principal Planning Officer commented in writing that at some point, and noting the nature of this track, there will be a proposal that simply asks too much cumulatively of this. We consider we are now at that stage. Also, the Highways Authority previously commented regarding safety, condition of the track, further deterioration, questioning how much more residential development can be approved off this access track. Lastly, please note, in respect of paragraph 3 of the committee report, number 1, Grovebury, Greenrig and the Brambles are not part of Woodford Gardens. Properties in Woodford Gardens are accessed via Fornham Road and not Avenue Approach. Number 2, the properties using the track are not limited to those stated in paragraph 3. Others include Fornham Road and several in Northgate Avenue, including business use.
Thank you very much indeed. Helen. Right, Councillor, in your capacity as a ward member, you've got 3 minutes, Councillor Sayer.
Thank you, Chair. As ward councillor, I'm somewhat conflicted with this application recommended for approval when West Suffolk Council have refused a similar adjacent application. It is obvious that concerns with this application rest on the unowned, unadopted track Pig Lane. The track on Monday was dry and did not seem too onerous, but residents tell me rainwater completely covers the track and potholes outside the 2 new properties. When underwater, residents cannot see the potholes, making the track dangerous to pedestrians as well as vehicles. The developers of the 2 new properties were supposed to reinstate the track, but did not do so. Refuse lorries back into Pig Lane, but there is nowhere for occupants of this new property to leave their bins except on private land or in Pig Lane. New owners will have to drag bins 100 yards or so to a collection point, and there is no verge. The fire service has either made no comment or given 4 pages of advice on installation of fire sprinklers for the property. The following are all quotes from Suffolk County Council Highways. In 2019, I think it likely that construction traffic for the proposed dwellings will lead to further deterioration of the surface, and that after the build, surface improvements will be necessary. A safe and secure access for all users is a requirement of the National Planning Policy Framework, Section 108B. No improvements were made. In 2021, on an adjacent refused application, Suffolk County Council said the track would have to carry emergency and delivery vehicles, so a turning head would be required to enable turning by a fire engine. The challenge with development access via the track is considering at what point the intensification is unsafe. We cannot recommend that this development is acceptable. And West Suffolk Council itself said a plot site of this nature creates backland development in which the local planning authority would not encourage or support. The addition of a dwelling in this location, said West Suffolk Council, is considered to give rise to adverse impacts on highway safety and is therefore considered contrary to the provision of policy DM46. Again, Suffolk County Council in 2021, the Highway Authority would like to take the opportunity to raise the issue of how much more residential development can be approved off this access track. Nearby Woodford Drive and the old Sentinel Works were essentially refused permission because of too many dwellings off a 1 tarmac driveway. Pig Lane is essentially a long, rough driveway with 13 garages accessing it, plus 20 that back onto Avenue Approach. Is 33 now too many, and should we uphold Suffolk County Council's concerns? In conclusion, Pig Lane is a pig of a problem because no one knows who owns it and no one has responsibility for the track. Residents will only undertake makeshift repairs to suit themselves. Suffolk County Council have questioned at the continued use of this track on safety grounds on more than one occasion.
Councillor
And-
Sayer, you've exhausted your 3 minutes. Can you finish up in one
One
sentence?
sentence exactly. Until those with an interest in the ownership of the track take action for its improvement, backland development that fronts Pig Lane should only be accessed from Northgate Avenue.
Thank you very much. Claire, if I could just invite Claire just to make a comment. I'm sure you'll understand. Yeah.
Just really for the benefit of public attending the meeting, because Councillor Dicker was not in the room during the presentation, he will not be able to take part in the vote on this item.
Thank you, Claire.
Excuse me, Chair. I'm having great difficulty hearing the noise. The sound level, I think, was turned down at one point.
Oh, can we just check the sound? The sound level, please, gentlemen. Can you hear that? Can you hear that, Phil? He's turned the loudspeaker towards you.
Yeah.
Are you okay? I mean, don't say if you're not. Okay. Okay. We'll just have to speak up a bit into the microphones anyway as well, because sometimes if you're oh yeah, because Jim's left the meeting. Do you want to move? Yeah.
Helping.
He just doesn't like my aftershave.
Thank you, and sorry for the disturbance.
That's quite all right. That's quite all right, Councillor Witham. Right, we're now at the stage when the committee debate the application. Councillor Waldron, please.
My normal bugbear with situations like this, planning application seems to me to be putting the cart before the horse. Who owns the right of way? Is there permission to use it as a right of way for building? We've had this so often where we pass planning permission and nothing happens because the right of way is controlled by a third party. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Waldron. Councillor London.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm going to make reference to a slide. I was wondering if it was possible to go back to the slide that shows the red line boundary, please. No, further back, you showed a different slide with the red line boundary. Sorry, that one. Yes, thank you. Looking at that, and then in reference to page 105 of our document booklets, show two different red line boundaries. I'm wondering, given the fact that this is including Pig Lane, which is a very important part of this, which red line boundary is correct, please?
Okay, they'll come back. Officers will pick that one up. Councillor Ball, please.
Thank you, Chair. There was a comment earlier about backland development, and I have to say I'm not clear on what the policy is on backland. I thought we didn't support it, and why is this not considered backland? Because it is, even though there is a primitive access.
Thank you, Councillor Ball. Councillor Mildmay White, please.
Thank you, Chairman. This is another interesting application, and the site visit was certainly worth going on, so I was pleased to have done that. Can you just clarify exactly where the rubbish is collected from? Because I can't see on Avenue Approach that there's anywhere to put bins and bags and things, so we do need to be certain that the collection can take place from a reasonable spot. I can't see that the rubbish trucks would be backing all the way down to this proposed new property. They might go to those first two that were indicated on the map, but I can't believe they'll be backing all the way down here. So we do need clarification on what the pickup point would be. The other thing, I am interested in what Suffolk County Council Highways said about the cumulative impact. Living in the countryside, we have a lot of properties who are accessed by unmade up tracks like this, so it's nothing unusual if you're a rural member But looking at the width of that track, the construction traffic that's got to come down it, I do have concerns about that cumulative effect. But on planning grounds, I can't see that we can refuse it from the point of view of other dwellings have been built in the same locations down that track. Nobody owns it. Nobody has the right to say you can't come up or down it. I imagine any of us could drive up or down it if we wanted every day. There are no restrictions on it. So it is a very difficult application, I think. But I am concerned about the cumulative aspect and where the rubbish collection will be. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Mildmay-White. Councillor Whittam, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I would go along with everything that Councillor Mildmay-White has said, and I would add that I have very grave concerns over the attendance of emergency vehicles down that track. I don't think a fire engine would fit down it, and there's no way of accessing a hydrant if there was a fire down there. And ditto with the ambulances. So I have great concerns over that and safety, and support everything that Councillor Mildmay-White said also. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whittam. Okay, no members with hands up at the moment. Could we go back to Tamara and Rachel, please?
Thank you. So Councillor Baldwin started with who owns the right of way, controlled by third party, etc. And the short answer is it's an unowned, private, unadopted track. So because we don't have a known landowner, it's a civil matter for the properties along the track to distinguish between themselves. Councillor London had a query in regards to the red line. So I just want to confirm that the one on the screen that you're seeing now is the correct one. The red line that's on your reports pack shows, just to sort of clarify, because I think I know what you mean, in the reports pack shows a sort of a little dot essentially at the front, and essentially that distinguishes that boundary wall that's existing that you saw on the photos. So that was that red line. Following that, we've had a slight amendment to confirm that the landowner has had a look at their land ownership and confirmed that it's the section just on that grass verge there. So hopefully that clarifies that what we're looking at is correct. Councillor Mildmay-White had a query in regards to bin and refuse collection. So I do actually have a slide here just in case this did come up. So within the report, there is a section on waste collection on page 96, paragraph 42. So as I've mentioned in the presentation, this is a historic waste collection that Waste Suffolk undertake. I did my own little investigation from the photographs to see where bins are positioned. So as you can see, bins aren't located at the junction of the track and avenue approach. Bins are positioned along the track, as you can see in these two photos here. So I assume that these bins are from the residents of those 3 dwellings in the cul-de-sac. So therefore indicating that the refuse lorry does reverse up and collect off the track to a point. We do also have, as you will see in the report as well, there is a condition requiring details of refuse storage and presentation to be provided if permission is approved. I think that's from me.
Thanks, Chair. Just to clarify, Councillor Ball raised a query about backland development. We don't have a policy that relates to backland development, but the type of backland development that's generally unacceptable is where a property doesn't have access to a road. So you have a narrow road running down the side of an existing property, and then a property at the back that can only get to the road by running straight past the host dwelling, if you like. So in this case, although you could describe it as backland because it's in the back garden of a property, it has an access that doesn't run past the host dwelling down the side. So In terms of when we consider backland development, it's more about looking at what the arrangements are, whether it impacts on the character of the area. One of the considerations in terms of the character of the area would be whether you've got other similar properties in that location, in a similar arrangement. And as we've seen on here, we do already have some properties that do have access off the track as opposed to the main front road. So I don't think it's strictly something that we would describe as backland development in the usual sense of the term. Councillor Mame White asked a question about cumulative impact. So when Tamara explained that we've had various applications on the site, and one of them was one where we did get an objection from Suffolk County Council in highways terms. That was a refusal that also included concerns about the size of the plot and the impact on the character of the area as well. As a result of us noting those concerns, we did, when we received a no objection from the County Council on this application, we did go back to them and question whether that was correct based on historic comments that they'd made. I think it's fair to say that that property is a lot further up the track than this one, but we did put that cumulative impact question to the County Council, and they have maintained that they don't think they can sustain an objection to this application on that basis. And last question, Councillor Whittam, you raised concerns about access for emergency vehicles, fire access, hydrants. Those are issues that would be covered by building regulations. So should the application be approved and before the site is developed, they would have to be addressed in terms of building regulations for this development, be that through this local authority or a private approved inspector. It is part of the building regulations considerations.
Thank you, officers. Right, I've got Councillor Sayer, Neil, London and Miller-Jones in that order. Now Councillor Bull. So, Councillor Sayer, please.
Thank you. Could you go back to the slide that showed the bins, please? Right, for clarification, the picture at the top there, those bins are located on a driveway which is private. The owners own that driveway, they paid for it. They could actually refuse anybody else to put their bins on it. The track, as you see, is very narrow, goes right up against that. On the opposite side is also private land. There is actually no verge along there at all. The bin lorry backs up between the houses from Avenue Approach. It keeps carrying on. Then it goes past the two new buildings where they can put their bins actually on their driveways to be collected. And the bin lorry then carries on through the track, which is narrow on both sides, comes up to this point where it is bound by private land on the left and right, and the people on the right, I know, will not be happy with bins being put on their land, in which case the bins from the new property will be dragged and have to be left in the lane. And there are properties further down the lane. A man with a truck who lives in the back of Fornham Road uses it regularly. And obviously the bin lorry is churning up the track every week as well.
Thank you, Councillor Sayer. Rachel wants to come back on that point immediately before I move on to Councillor Neil. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's just to clarify, we weren't suggesting that that's where the bins would be placed. It was just to demonstrate that there are collections that take place from the lane, and there's a condition recommended to ensure that we agree an appropriate place for the bins to be collected from. It was just to demonstrate that bins are collected from there by the waste service who does access that lane. So just to clarify that point, thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Councillor Neil, please.
Thank you, Chair. Suffolk County Council, they're not going to have any objection to a private track. It's of no consequence to them, is it? It's a privately owned track. It's not under their under their remit to look after it or anything like that. Their concern would be coming out onto a major road as opposed to any activity on that track. It seems to me that the cumulative effect of all the traffic on that unowned track, people have got to live with that. So when is enough enough? Or probably the application for the development in itself. If it was somewhere else, we'd all put our hands up and say not a problem. But it's this track is the big issue. So I support Councillor Sayer, and I won't.
Thank you, Councillor Neil. Councillor London, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think I've realised what it is that's been sort of bugging me about this, and the specific sort of way that the driveway is going to impact on the path. If we look at where the red line boundary was on the confirmed to be true red line boundary, we can show that the path or the road is going to be sloping back down. So if we could get a picture of the side view, please, with the levels. Thank you very much. So we can see that on the proposed site on the bottom, we've got extending out to the left into what would naively be considered part of the track. We've got an extension of the driveway that's sort of at a raised section. Now we know that that actually is coming out further than the buttresses on the wall were. So what we're going to have, even though that is within the red line of the site, it's going to be a protrusion sticking out, sort of like a hump sticking out from the side by over a foot, possibly a foot and a half into what seems to be the path, although it is admittedly within the curtilage of the building, which is going to make a narrow path even narrower. Can members see what I mean? Am I being obvious? And I think that's actually a bit of a concern, because if we've got other sort of like bin lorry going past other houses further down, or as you say, other people further down, it's gonna impact on through traffic. That lump coming out the side.
Thank you, Councillor London. Councillor Miller-Jones, please.
Thank you. Sorry. I sort of shared concerns about emergency vehicles, about a lot of the things that have been mentioned, but it seems that there is there are conditions in place about the bins. There's the building regulations for the emergency vehicles. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that if there were problems with any of these things, with emergency vehicles, etc., then even if we do approve this application, it won't go ahead if these things aren't sorted. There are conditions in place and there are regulations in place. So on that basis, since the only problems we have are problems that will be resolved or it won't go ahead, I would like to propose approval of this. I do wonder whether we could perhaps, I took what somebody said on board about the potential that construction vehicles could damage the track. I wonder whether we could put a condition to say that the applicant would need to repair Pig Lane if construction did damage that lane. So my suggestion would be to approve with that condition, if possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Miller-Jones. Is that seconded by anybody? Councillor Chester, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's not perfect, as many applications. I sympathise with the ward members' perspective. There's been some good comments made on the problems here, but I've been heartened by responses from officers, so on that basis I'm happy to second. Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chester. Councillor Ball, please.
Sorry, just a quick one. I believe there is a definitive width that an access road has to be for planning consideration, and I'd just like to confirm that this track does actually meet that definitive width.
Thank you, Councillor Ball. I've exhausted my list of members, so, I beg your pardon, Councillor Glossop.
When we were on the site visit on Monday, I questioned you about this application and said, surely we're just looking at the application for the property. We've had a long discussion now about Pig Lane, but problems with Pig Lane surely are a civil matter which we can't, it's not our problem. So therefore, should we only still be looking at whether we approve the application for this building? That's what I want to clarify. Thank you.
I'm sure that's going to come. Yeah, so we had a long discussion, didn't we, on the site visit about the lane, and we're having a long discussion today. And Councillor London, yes, please. Yeah.
I realise I've made an assumption. Can we go back one slide again? Sorry to Thank you. I've assumed that there is going to be some kind of drainage at the end of the driveway, and I'd like to just confirm that we have plans for that, because otherwise it is going to be pouring in, and how that drainage is going to work outside of that wall. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor London. I'll just give officers a moment just to collect their thoughts.
So, Chair, the condition 10, the recommended condition 10, deals with measures to ensure there's no surface water runoff into the lane. There's been a couple of comments, picked up ones from Councillor Glossop, but also Councillor Neal, about, you know, whether it's material to think about the access. And Councillor Neal's concern was it's not an adopted road, so, you know, are County Council interested in it at all? So as a planning authority and also as a local highway authority, we do need to consider, and I think Councillor Sayers mentioned it in her ward member comments at the beginning, it is material that we consider whether access is safe and secure for new proposals. So in that regard, whilst it's not a public highway, it's a road that's open to the public, and therefore we do need to consider whether access is safe and secure and suitable to service a new dwelling. So the Highways Authority have said it is, and the recommendation made by officers is that a single dwelling on this track would be acceptable with conditions. Councillor Glossop, the areas that aren't material are whether the applicant has a right to access the track, who owns the track. Those are matters that would need to be considered in a civil way and are not material planning considerations. I then want to come on to, they're all about the track actually, all these questions. Councillor Ball's question about whether there's a definitive width for a road to serve dwellings. Certainly in terms of County Council guidance, we do have widths that they would look at for an adopted road. Obviously this isn't an adopted road. It is quite narrow, but from the highways perspective, they are happy that an additional dwelling could go on an access from that lane. And then Councillor Miller-Jones, your proposal to approve, and then you queried about repairing damage from construction traffic. I'd just draw your attention to conditions 8 and 9. So what page were they on, Tamara? Conditions 8 and 9 on page 98. We could add in there, and this has happened previously, I've seen highways authorities recommend it before, we could slightly change that wording so that we can ensure that any damage caused by the construction or delivery traffic during construction could be repaired. We'll have to look carefully at the wording of that, but we could include that within conditions 8 and 9 of the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Oh, Councillor Sayer.
Could I just make sure that condition is actually followed up and enforced? The two properties that were built, the water flows off there, it carries on right across the lane. The lane, you cannot see the lane. It is under complete water. The potholes are underwater. People walking along there cannot see the potholes as they walk along if they need to. So that was a condition of those two dwellings being built, that they had drainage and it's not working, and also that they repair the track. And the developers did not repair the track. So please make that ensure that the conditions are followed up and enforceable, please.
Okay, on that particular point, Rachel's going to come back.
Thank you. We can certainly look back in terms of the permission that's already, you know, the dwellings that have been built, when we'll look at what enforcement action is necessary if there are indeed matters that need to be addressed. What I would want to stress is in putting conditions on this permission, if members vote to approve it, the applicant can't be responsible for fixing other matters that are already an issue in the lane, but we would pursue that separately if there is a matter to pursue there. Thank you.
Councillor David Smith, please.
Yeah, did we ascertain where the relevant location was for the bins? Because I'm not clear on that, and how far down the lane, up the lane, whatever, and how far the refuse collection vehicles are prepared to travel. Because I think I did hear it mention about dragging the bins 100 yards, which seems a bit excessive. I've still got concerns over the access for the fire tenders as well, and also the cumulative impact, which was mentioned earlier. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Neal.
Thank you. I just want to clarify or dispute what's already been said, I suppose. The developer is going to repair the damage to the track, should there be, but he can't repair any damage that's already there. But if he's driving through a pothole and the pothole was 6 inches deep and now it's 10 inches deep, he's responsible for the damage to that pothole. So he's got to contribute towards that, or am I wrong in saying that?
I think
it's a job to monitor, isn't it? It's a, you know, I think what you're asking is there's an easy get-out clause for the applicant to say, well, actually, that was there before.
Yeah, I think from memory, Rachel said that adding something in would have to be considered very carefully, wouldn't it, in terms of the wording? But I'll let you answer, Rachel.
Yeah, we need to think very carefully about how we word it, because what I was trying to explain is that this applicant can't be held responsible for, I think Councillor Sayer was talking about flooding issues as a result of the two properties that have already been built. And we will look into that in relation to any enforcement matters relating to those two properties that have already been built. What we'll have to do, what we've done in past circumstances, is look at or get a record of the condition of the road before any work takes place, so that it's reinstated to at least that level as a result, you know, after the construction has happened. So it's not easy, but we'll look carefully at the wording that we use for that condition.
Right, members, I'm going to put the proposal now. Councillor
Smith had a question.
I beg your pardon, yes.
So Councillor David Smith had a query in regards to refuse distances and that sort of thing. So I've just pulled up this slide because from the location of the new dwelling with that red dot there is approximately 130 metres to Avenue Approach. As we've seen on the photos before, and as Councillor Sayer has mentioned, these three properties here do leave refuse bins at the junction of their private road there. So, I mean, quick judgment, the refuse vehicle goes down I don't know, up to 100 metres looking at that sort of plan. Obviously, as we've mentioned, it would be for the applicants to locate their bins at the appropriate location, and we do have obviously conditions to sort of follow that up. So hopefully that clarifies.
Right, I start again. We're going to test this proposal, which is for approving the application in line with officer's recommendation, and that was proposed by Councillor Miller-Jones, and it was seconded by Councillor Chester, and the repair condition as a result of construction traffic has been accepted. I'm presuming you're content with that, Councillor Chester? On that basis, can I share a show of hands in favour of approving the application, please? And those against, please? Are there any abstentions? Over to you, Claire.
So that's eight votes in favour, 5 votes against. Motion is carried and the application is approved.
Thank you very much indeed. And we move on to the final application of the day, which is agenda item 8 in the papers. And Tamara is staying with us because it's actually Tamara's is the presenting case officer on the final application. Yeah. Please. No, it's not. No. So this for me is a relatively simple application. Pardon? Crikey, do you know what? I'm very, very warm.
You're in the hot seat.
Yes. Well, that might determine the length of the debate then. Let's be quite clear about it. So, okay, Tamara, agenda item 8. Thank you.
No pressure. I will try and be swift and clear with this one. So this is the final application for today. So this is an application for full planning permission to a building within the Abbey Gardens in Central Bury Steadmans. The application is proposing to install a new air source heat pump with associated infrastructure, including an enclosure and a small concrete pad to the front of the air source heat pump. The site itself is the Abbey Gardens within the ownership of West Suffolk Council, which is why we are here today at Development Control Committee. The application is recommended for approval. So you're probably all well clued up on the Abbey Gardens, but for context, we do have the location plan. As you can see highlighted, let me just get the pointer. As you can see highlighted, the air source heat pump is to be attached to an existing modern toilet facilities block within the northwest of the park. As highlighted in red, the air source heat pump will be located on the southeastern elevation. For further context, here we've got satellite and GIS again. So as we're aware, the Abbey Gardens is a registered historic park and garden, a scheduled ancient monument, and therefore of high heritage status. The site is under Article 4 direction within the conservation area and is also surrounded by many listed buildings, which you can see coloured pink here. So we've got the proposed site plan for the installation of the heat pump. So as you can see, it will sit adjacent to the rear wall on the back of the toilet block with a paved area to the front and protected enclosure surrounding. The pump will sit adjacent to existing planting with additional plantings proposed to help screen the development. And as you can see, it's quite a modest development of just over 2.1 square metres. And then just following on from that, we've got some visualisations. So again, you can see sort of how modest the installation of this air source heat pump will be. And again, it will sit against the rear wall. In terms of just a very quick dimension, the pump itself is 1.8 metres in width, just over 1 metres in height, and then 0.65 in depth. So that gives you a basic sort of visualisation of how that will sit against the wall. And then on the screen now we've got a wider site plan. So given that the toilet block will be inaccessible while the air source heat pump is being installed, we have got alternative facilities proposed, which will be on the green opposite the block. Appropriate fencing will also be installed, and I'm not sure if you'll be able to see it, but it is blue on the plan and just surrounds the site there. In terms of consultee responses, there's a very brief summary on the slide, but detailed responses in your report. And as discussed, the site is located in a highly sensitive location, particularly in relation to heritage. Therefore, we've obviously consulted with our Conservation Officer, Historic England and the Gardens Trust. No objections have been raised by consultees, as you'll see on the screen. The Conservation Officer has highlighted that the block is a modern building within the grand sort of historic surroundings of the Abbey Gardens, and therefore it's the most appropriate location for a modern heat pump to sit against, and is therefore not anticipated to cause adverse harm to the surrounding Abbey Gardens or heritage. Our environmental health team have commented on the proposal and again confirmed no objections. We are talking about a heat pump today, so obviously there is an element of noise that is produced. In this case, we've been told that the heat pump will operate at around 61 decibels, which environmental health have advised is approximate to a normal conversation between two people. So therefore, it's not considered to be adversely loud. In addition to this, we note in terms of neighbouring amenity, and we've got listed buildings surrounding, a lot of the noise produced by the heat pump will be absorbed by the modern block itself due to its location on the rear elevation. No objections have been raised by ward members, neighbours or members of the public. Town Council have recommended approval, however, have made comments on the temporary facilities, which I just showed you on that previous plan. Following a discussion with officers, the temporary facilities are considered to be appropriate, which are on that plan. However, obviously, given the central location of the Abbey Gardens, alternative facilities are in close proximity to the site, such as within Ram Meadow Park car park if needed. So that's gone through the consultation responses. Now I've got a quick summary in regards to comments and conclusion, which I've just taken from the report. So in terms of the principle of development, we have got support from policy DM8 and paragraph 164 of the NPPF in terms of reusable and sustainable forms of energy. In terms of impact on character and appearance, as I've mentioned, we have had a deep look in terms of the impact it would have on the surrounding heritage by consulting with Conservation, Gardens Trust and Historic England. Again, as I've mentioned, being located on the modern building, it's the most appropriate location. It will be largely screened by additional planting and is therefore deemed to be, there won't be an adverse impact from its addition. And then in regards to local amenity, I've gone through the noise sort of element in regards to that's considered to be low. Public Health and Housing have recommended conditions in regards to noise, which will obviously be applied and controlled via condition to ensure that neighbours aren't adversely impacted. So for these reasons, the application is recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Tamara. There are no registered speakers, and we've got Councillor Miller-Jones.
Thank you. Yeah, obviously, this is great and everything. I just on the temporary toilets, on the sort of accessible and the sort of parent and child facilities. I just wanted some clarification on what the issue was, if you have more details from the Town Council. Are there sort of changing facilities within the disabled toilet and the accessible toilet, and would it be possible to include another accessible toilet if the issue was that it wasn't enough? I don't know exactly what the issue was, but I feel that this should be addressed if it is a concern, and if we can do anything about it, I would like us to. But apart from that, I would go ahead and propose approval of this again. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Miller-Jones. Is that seconded, please? Councillor Mildmay-White. And would you like to speak, Councillor?
Nothing further to add, Chairman. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so can we address Councillor Miller-Jones's issue? Thank you.
Yes, we've don't have any more details on what the specific concerns of the town council were, other than what's included in the report. It's actually an operational issue for the property team or the energy team when they do the installation. So those sorts of works, we've included them in the slides, but they're not actually formally requiring planning permission. It's temporary works to facilitate the construction. So it's really an operational matter for the team that will be installing the air source heat pump, but we have passed on the comments of the town council to the team that will do the work. So whether they'll be able to take them on or into account or not, I'm not entirely sure, but it's not relevant for us.
I'm just going to get Councillor Miller-Jones, not Muller.
Thank you.
And then I've got Councillor Glossop. But
Thank you. Sorry, I just wanted, do you know, is there a plan for there to be changing facilities within that accessible toilet, or is that not something that is, do we not know that? And can we insist that the operations team make sure there are changing facilities?
Yes, you're right, we don't know, and we'll pass on those concerns to the team. Thank you.
thank you, Councillor Miller-Jones. Councillor Glossop, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I just wanted to talk about that because it said that they could go to Ram Meadow. Well, Ram Meadow, if you've got a child or a baby that needs changing, is quite a walk from Abbey Gardens. So I think we do need to clarify where these facilities are going to be, and for disabled people as well, because it's quite a walk from Abbey Gardens to Ram Meadow. So if we can make sure that we've got good facilities in place, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Glossop. Councillor Waldron, please.
I don't wish to be rude, but we're considering an Air Force heat pump. We're not considering temporary toilets, so all these discussions are irrelevant. Sorry, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Waldron. Is there anything? No. Okay. Right. It's been proposed by Councillor Miller-Jones for approval, seconded by Councillor Mildmay-White, and that's in line with the officer's recommendation. Could I see a show of hands in favour of that approval, please?
So that appears to be unanimous, and the motion is carried and the application approved.
Thank you, Claire, and that the meeting is formally closed. I just would like to get members behind for one moment, literally for one moment. Can I confirm that you've cut the live stream, please? Can you cut it?